Dream, search, drive. Cars.co.za.
You can't claim that budget doesn't have your back. Sure, but you can claim via WhatsApp. Budget, the official insurer of good South Africans.
Hello and welcome to the Cars.co.za 2023 Big Bakkie Shootout. For your infotainment and viewing pleasure, we will be comparing the new Ranger, the new Amarok, the Triton, the Hilux, the P-Series, the Navara and the D-Max. And why not load all these cars up in our compare tool and follow along in our free app. You join me in the new Ranger. This is the XLT bi-turbo 10-speed box. And as of this morning, as far as I can tell, the price has just gone up. So now this is north of 800,000 Rand, 806,000 Rand to be specific. And well, what do you get for your money? Well, the 2-liter bi-turbo under the engine is largely carried over from the previous generation. Slightly detuned, weirdly enough, just, well, 3 kilowatts shy of what it was. So 154 kilowatts in here, 500 newtons, and this for me is a fantastic engine. It's a great mix of power, torque and fuel economy. I've been averaging 9.4 liters to the 100 over my test period, and I've just really been enjoying this new Ranger. It feels like a next generation product. You know, something Ford does better than any other Bakkie manufacturer, in my opinion, is the ride quality of their Bakkies. You just get what's quite close to an SUV experience. Somehow they managed to minimize the effect of having a body on frame chassis, you know, ladder frame with a double cab on top. So yes, it's not going to give you that perfect unibody ride that you'll get from a BMW X5, for instance. But as far as Bakkies go, I don't really think it gets much better than this. The interior has of course come a long way. You now get this portrait screen. It's slightly smaller in here than the one you get in the Raptor and the Wildtrak, but to be honest, it's tough to notice. Maybe if you looked at them side by side, you'd see that the screen was smaller. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. I've got a digital screen in front of me as well. The graphics have all been improved massively as far as I can tell. The resolution is really good. For me, this is a great interior. Looks good, feels good, high quality materials, well put together, good sound system, no complaints when it comes to that sort of thing. Now the XLT, however, is missing a couple of comfort options which I would hope you'd get at this price point. So for instance, no heated seats, which are delightful in winter, and the seats are manual as well. In fact, of all the Bakkies we have here, this and the D-Max are the only Bakkies with manual seats. But look at it this way, this car is almost 100,000 Rand cheaper than the equivalent Amarok. Yes, the Amarok has a couple more spec items like heated seats and like electric seats, but there's not a huge difference between them, and you're getting the exact same car underneath the skin. I must say, I think I prefer the Amarok's interior. I think they've done a great job with the design, but for me, a highlight here is that Ford have retained the climate functions as actual buttons, whereas in the Amarok you have to dig in the infotainment for the climate control, and that to me just gets annoying. Right now, for me, this is the pick of the bunch. I think if I had to choose a Bakkie, and let me put this out there, Bakkies are not my favorite kind of car. I don't need one, so to me they just feel too big and a bit impractical to live with. But obviously South Africans do absolutely love these things, and I think that the Ford Ranger has moved the goalposts quite a bit. We're only expecting a new Hilux in 2025. Toyota runs on a 10-year life cycle with 2 facelifts in each cycle. So the Hilux is now on its 2nd facelift, whereas we have a brand new Ranger. And although this platform is largely carried over, highly modified, but largely carried over from the previous generation was really good. And to me, because the cab has been so radically redesigned and the interior has been so radically redesigned, it feels like a completely new generation car. For Bakkie owners, reliability is obviously a massive factor when purchasing a Bakkie, and it's difficult for us to comment on that because, well, we get given the cars for a week and then we give them back. We don't live with them, and we don't have any real true data on the reliability of, say, a Hilux versus a Ford. Of course, there's stories that you hear around the braai, but that's not exactly great science that I can base my journalism on. But what I can tell you is, as a product, right now, all the other Bakkies are chasing this Ranger. Right, and into the Navara we go. Now, I've just jumped out of the Ranger, which I think is the best riding Bakkie here, into the Navara. And Nissan makes quite a big deal of the fact that this is the only Bakkie which is on coil springs at the rear. But still, even with that very, very cool technology, the ride is just not as good. It's not bad. It really isn't bad. It's probably up there with the best of them. But the Ranger just edges it for me. And one of the weird things about the Navara, which the other Bakkies don't seem to suffer from, is the steering is very, very heavy. Out here on the highway, it's actually fine. You want heavy steering on the highway. But when you're parking the car, when you're just sort of nipping around the suburbs, you really do feel the extra weight on the steering. It's under-assisted rather than over-assisted. And I think in a Bakkie, over-assisted steering actually makes more sense. Now, interestingly, under the bonnet, Nissan made a bit of a U-turn with their engines. Before this facelift, when the Navara first came out, if you bought a Navara, you got a 2.3 litre twin-turbo diesel. They then reverted back to the 2.5 litre single turbo, and you lost a little bit of power and torque. So 140 kilowatts in here, 450 newtons, so it's down in power and torque compared to the Hilux and the Ranger and the Amarok, but not by much. It just feels like the engine is a bit older and a bit lazier and a bit grumblier than some of the other Bakkies. The sound of this Bakkie actually reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of my uncle's Isuzu when I was growing up. It's that sort of old diesel that you used to get. And you know, maybe that's not a bad thing. What you want in a Bakkie really is a tried and trusted technology, tried and tested technology that is hopefully going to outlive you. That's what you want. Now, in terms of interior, it feels a little bit older in here as well. I mean, for instance, you've got dials instead of a big digital instrument cluster, but I actually prefer dials, so I'm fine with that. The design and the plastics, yeah, it's a bit far behind the rest of the cars, especially on the door, for instance. The door does look a little bit cheap. And then when we did our Bakkie shootout in 2021, you'll find the link to that in the description below, I complained that the Navara's interior had too many tones of silver and chrome in here. It looked like a bit of a fun house, like one of those like magic mirror places you go at the circus or something. There was silver down here, silver down here, silver up here, silver around the gear knob, and it's all gone a bit black and a bit darker and a bit anthracite and chrome, and they've got rid of some of the chrome, and I much prefer it. It looks so much better than it used to. So there we go, the power of motoring journalism in action, improving Bakkies for the consumer. That's what we do here. In terms of pricing, this Pro 4X, which is the top of the range Navara, I think it looks really good. I think they've done a great job with the exterior aesthetics. But even though the Navara is similarly priced and does have one or two extra features like electric seats over the Ford has some great tech like lane keep assist and the high beam assist, which you get in the XLT for similar money to this car. So I think at the moment, the Navara represents an interesting package. I think it's a name that South Africans trust. It's an engine that's tried and tested, and maybe not the best technology out there or the most advanced technology, and definitely not the most efficient, because right now I'm getting an indicated average of 14 liters to the 100, which I must be honest doesn't sound right. I have a feeling maybe this car's been used off-road or whatever the case may be, and the historical average is not quite right. But that at the moment is what it's showing. So it's a bit more of an old-fashioned Bakkie that looks really good from the outside. Interior maybe a bit dated as well, and missing some of the tech of the other Bakkies, but it is sort of midway between the P-Series in terms of price and the Hilux, which is now almost at R1 million. So you can get a top spec Nissan Navara for a good 180,000 Rand cheaper than your top spec Toyota Hilux. And into the Mitsubishi Triton Extreme we go. So what's happening here? 2.4 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel under the bonnet, and on paper 133 kilowatts 430 newtons makes it one of the least powerful Bakkies here, but it's actually the fastest. If you missed our drag race with all these Bakkies, go check it out, link in the description. You'll see that the Triton won. It beat out the Ranger and the Amarok, which are way more powerful, and the Hilux as well. So this is a bit of a sports Bakkie, which I found quite surprising. The other thing it's got going for it is the price. 778,000 Rand makes it almost 200,000 Rand cheaper than the top spec Hilux, which we have here, the Legend RS Auto. 200,000 Rand. Wow, that is a significant difference between this, the top of the range Triton, and the top of the range Hilux. It's closer in price, say, to the Ranger, but wow, this is where it starts to kind of fall apart for the Triton. This feels like not a previous generation Bakkie, it feels like a previous generation Bakkie. Yeah, it doesn't feel like much has moved on here in the Triton in terms of just about everything. The ride quality is jiggly as anything. I can literally feel the chassis like moving around beneath me. The cabin is dated, would be maybe a generous way of putting it. Yeah, the game has moved on and the Triton hasn't. But all of this being said, this is an old Bakkie, and a brand new Triton has been revealed. It looks really good, and it will be launched in South Africa next year. So this is sort of the last dance of the Triton. They've given it a sticker pack and called it the Extreme, and it's not a bad farewell to this Bakkie. Look, I think given that it's a Mitsubishi, it does have that reliability reputation going for it. It does feel like this Bakkie will last. I must say that driving all these Bakkies back to back is completely fascinating, and I would really recommend that you do this. If you're not, already sold on a particular brand, then take a day and go visit some dealerships and go and drive all of the Bakkies that you're looking at back to back. It's a really illuminating experience, because if you drove this in isolation, you might think, oh well, it's okay, but if you drive it back to back with something like the Ranger or the Navara maybe, then you start to feel why or how it is inferior to those cars. But I mean, it does have a few things going for it. It's one of the more economical Bakkies here. It's averaging 10.4 on our test route, and it'll probably get a little bit better if you stick to the open road. There are some nice touches in the cabin, like there's this great rear aircon with independent rear aircon controls. That's quite nice. It's all sort of built into the headliner. The tonneau cover looks pretty good. That's a decent tonneau cover. I like the roll hoop design. It's actually quite a good looking Bakkie, and I think the one that's about to replace it looks even better. So it's kind of got those cool Bakkie bragging rights, the roll hoop, the tonneau cover, the good looks, the chunky wheel arches. But then the cabin, I think, does just let it down a bit, and that is quite unfortunate. But at 778, yeah, pretty good value. Are you ready to up your Bakkie game? Cars.co.za has over 70,000 cars to choose from right now on our main site or via our free app. Sort by price, mileage, year, low to high, high to low, and you'll find the best deals from dealerships and private sellers around the country. Cars.co.za has everything you need to find the right car. And into the Isuzu we go. Is it Isuzu or Isuzu? I don't know. I say Isuzu. Let's go with that. The new D-Max, new motor as well. It's the largest displacement motor we have here. It's a 3-liter 4-cylinder turbo diesel, 140 kilowatts, 450 newtons, which interestingly is exactly on the nose the same power and torque as the 2.5 in the Nissan Navara, and the two are also extremely close on price. I mean, literally about 2,000 Rand, that's all there is between them. So 812 grand for this, the Isuzu D-Max. We're in the second from the top spec is that special V-Cross edition. We're in the LSE 4x4 Auto. And right off the bat now, having driven already 3 Bakkies this morning, this is one of the better ride qualities in the pack that we have on this test. And what I also like the Isuzu, I'm not sure why, but its gravel road comfort is very, very good as well. I'm pretty impressed with this. In terms of the cabin noise, maybe not amongst the best that we have here today. And wow, this engine, it might be new, but it sounds old. It's a very grumbly turbo diesel. You definitely know it's there. You know that there's a turbo diesel under the bonnet. But good pulling power, good tow rating. If I put my foot down here from 110, that's not bad. Fuel consumption, slightly on the heavier side. We're averaging 11.4 at the moment, which is not too bad either. It'll probably get a bit better with some more open road driving. We've mostly been driving it in and around town. I've always liked the Isuzu. It's a name which I think has earned its reputation for being pretty rock solid. These things sell in big numbers in South Africa without even really trying. 1,000 of these a month roughly find homes across the country every single month. It's a brand that South Africans love, and it's also a South African success story because they bought the factory in PE from General Motors when they pulled out the country, and these are now made locally for here and for the world. So that's cool. Proudly South African. In terms of your interior, they have given it a complete overhaul, and I think largely it has been successful. You do get a relatively large touchscreen in the middle here, and all the finishes and touches are just a bit more premium than that you get in the Navara. Actually, in some places, quite a lot more premium. So a nicer soft touch on the dashboard with some contrast stitching. Down here, this looks a little bit more premium as well. Your switchgear on your aircon looks a bit more premium. I like how they've stuck with a lot of buttons for your aircon. It's just easier to stab at and to use while you're on the go. Leather around the steering wheel is really high quality. You can see they were like, right, let's make the steering wheel awesome. Let's go with get us the pricey leather. Get a price on the top quality stuff. That's what's gone on here on the steering wheel. I like it. It's good. Feels good. I think the Isuzu has just remained a good, honest Bakkie. It's not trying to be too flashy. It's not trying to win any styling awards, although I think it does look better than ever. This is just a good, reliable, honest, hard-working Bakkie. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, I'm still yet to drive the Amarok, the Hilux, and the P-Series, but right now, this is just behind the Ranger in terms of ride quality for me. And also, what I really appreciate is that the door sill over here is at the perfect height so that you can adopt the South African Bakkie driving position. Elbow on the door, one hand on the steering wheel. Look how comfortable I am. Absolute perfect ergonomics. All the Bakkies we have here today are full 4x4. They all have low range. And the P-Series, the one we have, is the brand new limited edition, which should be on sale by the time this video gets published. And they've now fixed something that the P-Series was missing, which was the absence of a rear diff lock. But of course, in here, in the Isuzu, you've got all of that, 2 high, 4 low, and your lockable rear diff. And that means you should be able to go just about anywhere with your Isuzu D-Max. One thing that is very curious though about this Isuzu is the amount of feedback I'm getting through the wheel. Like it's too much. Like you get these sort of real jitters through the wheel. You can probably actually see it on camera. None of the other Bakkies do that. I wonder why that is. I'm not sure why the Isuzu doesn't have the best on-road manners, but it, for me, has the best gravel road ride quality of all the Bakkies here. I mean, we're sort of hammering it a little bit along this farm road, and the Isuzu just copes so well. It's so comfortable over this, what is really quite a bad surface. It feels like this car was tuned for gravel and then tuned for tarmac. The P-Series from Great Wall Motors. Now, I must admit, I've been a bit of a fan of the P-Series since it arrived in South Africa, and I think it's mostly because of the value proposition. You get what is a really impressive options list, well, spec list for the price, and it just undercuts everything else by a massive margin. I mean, we're talking about 300,000 Rand less here than our top spec Bakkie, the Hilux, and still significantly less than all the other Bakkies as well. So ordinarily your top spec P-Series would be 640,000 Rand, but GWM very kindly gave us an exclusive on this, the limited, which comes in at 694,000 Rand. And for that 54,000 Rand, you do get quite a lot of things. So you get new wheels, you get much nicer 4x4 orientated tires, you get body cladding, and there's a front and rear lockable diff. You get a different front bumper up front, different grille, and you get a winch. So quite a lot in the pack. Oh, and a snorkel. Sorry, forgot the snorkel. Get the snorkel included as well. So quite a lot for that 54,000, and that's on top of all the existing tech that the P-Series came with. So for instance, lane center keeping, which none of the other Bakkies have. So I could turn it on, take my hands off the wheel, though you're not supposed to, don't be naughty, but it will keep the car, it'll steer the car between the lines. That's very, very cool tech. Electric seats all round. And then there's just the general feel and look of the interior. It's like GWM bought all of its rivals and had a look at the interiors and thought, right, let's not do that. Let's do something else. And so you end up with an interior which presents very, very well. I mean, look at this diamond quilting on the leather on the door here. I mean, that's something that you'd probably expect from a Mercedes G-Wagon or something like that. The screens are really large and really crisp. The resolution's fantastic. The 3D camera system is the best by far of any of the Bakkies that we have here. There's just really nice touches everywhere you look. So from the outside, the P-Series right from the showroom floor looks more purposeful, more aggressive, and more adventure-y than ever before. And from the inside, it's just as luxurious and comfortable as you might expect. And for the price, there is just no better value Bakkie on the market. Now, where it starts to fall apart a little bit for the P-Series for me is the drivetrain. So this is the least powerful Bakkie here. It's a 2-liter single turbo diesel with 120 kilowatts and 400 newtons, and it is laggy. Wow. Especially when you're getting going from a standstill, it's like the turbo's coming, it's gonna come now, here comes the turbo, and then you get going. It's obviously not that bad, I'm just exaggerating, but the lag is significantly more noticeable than it is in any of the other Bakkies. However, the fuel consumption is a little bit better than some of the other Bakkies here. Not as good as that as you get in the Ranger, which just shows how efficient that Ranger and now Amarok engine is. But we're getting 10.4 to the 100 in here, which is not bad. Ah, heated seats. Good for my bad back that I've managed to stuff up over the last few days. One of the more curious elements of this P-Series interior though is how big the steering wheel is. I don't know if I'm just going a bit mad, but it really does feel like this is an unnecessarily large steering wheel. It feels a bit strange in your hands, but I'm also quite enjoying the fact that the car is basically looking after me in terms of keeping me in the center of the road. So with this lane center keeping on, what's quite nice is you don't have to put in little adjustments all the time on long journeys to make sure that your vehicle is in the middle of the road and between the lanes. The car just does those little adjustments for you. And I really like that. It means that you don't fatigue as quickly when you're on long distance drives. It's cool tech. It's tech that you find in very expensive cars. It's increasingly becoming more available, but to have it in a Bakkie, I can't think of another Bakkie that does this. Ride quality, not the best of the group here. It feels like this car is very, very firmly sprung. It's not particularly great out on the open road here, and it wasn't particularly great on gravel either. However, I will say though that the car does feel well put together. So there's no rattles or squeaks to speak of. It does feel to me like a solid car that's just being bounced around by an overly firm suspension. Right, backseat comfort, very important when it comes to Bakkies, and we've done something called the Soundy test. So our Soundy, Adrian, was sitting in the back of all of the Bakkies while I was driving them, and he has given me his rating. So he thinks the Amarok has the best rear seat comfort, followed by the Isuzu, followed by the Ranger. Now those two cars, the Ranger and the Amarok, actually do have different seats, so that does make sense. Then the Navara, then the P-Series, the Hilux second last, and then the Triton for the worst rear seats. Right, the Amarok. So these days you can choose to have a Ford Ranger with a Ford badge on it, or you can have a Ford Ranger with a Volkswagen badge on it. Now that's maybe being a bit simplistic and maybe even a little bit mean, but at the end of the day, these are Ford Rangers. Ford Ranger engine, Ford Ranger gearbox, Ford Ranger chassis. However, in saying that, I do feel like Volkswagen have gone to great lengths to differentiate their product, at least aesthetically, from the Ranger. So the outside, completely different. And then they could have been lazy and just borrowed the Ford Ranger dash. I mean, let's be honest, right? That was an option. They could have just literally said, all right, Ford, stick the Ranger dash in the Amarok and stick a Volkswagen badge on the steering wheel. However, they haven't done that. You've got a completely redesigned interior in here, and it looks and feels fancier than the interior in the Ford. You've got leather up on top of the dashboard with this nice contrast stitching. You've got a couple of different tones to the dash, completely different design, especially around the cubbyhole area. Yes, they have obviously taken the touchscreen from the Ford, but it has its own software and its own look and feel. And interestingly, the Amarok has ditched the climate control buttons, and you now have one climate button down here, and then you have to go and use the touchscreen, which is possibly one of my least favorite ways to change the climate control. I think buttons are the better way to go. But sitting here, you do forget that you're in a clone of the Ranger. You're in a Volkswagen. And then there is just the feel of this thing. And yeah, I mean, it's a clone of the Ranger, so the Ranger is as good. But I've now driven 6 Bakkies this morning back to back, and I got in here and it literally just feels like another class of vehicle. The ride comfort, the way it deals with road imperfections, the way it cruises over gravel, it is so impressive. It's hard for me to actually describe to you how much better this feels than some of the other Bakkies that we have here today. But yes, you are paying a premium for all of this. This Bakkie is about 100,000 Rand more than the Ford Ranger that we have today. This is the style, the 2-liter bi-turbo style with a 10-speed box. If you want the style with a V6, the TDI V6, then that's an extra 66,000 Rand. So then you're at almost 970,000 Rand for an Amarok. Then you can still get the Pan America and you can still get the Aventura, which are well over $1 million. But for 900 grand, I do feel like what you're getting here is pretty damn close to an SUV experience with, you know, the Bakkie bit hanging off the back. Sure, it's never going to be as good as a unibody SUV, but damn, it is impressively close. For a body on frame chassis to feel this good, I'm so impressed. I think one of the reasons why this Bakkie just feels more premium, more expensive, higher quality than just about everything else is down to the noise, vibration, harshness, the NVH levels. There's just less road noise, there's less wind noise, there's less engine noise, there's less vibration coming into the cabin, and you just feel like the Ford and VW engineers have gone to great lengths to improve on the NVH levels over just about every one of their rivals and over the previous generations of these Bakkies. So under the bonnet, the same 2-liter bi-turbo engine that you get in the Ford, 154 kilowatts, 500 Newton meters. Very impressive engine. Funnily enough though, in here, we're averaging about a litre more than we are in the Ranger, 10.5 to the 100, so it just goes to show you what driving styles can do. Although, I wonder if aerodynamics plays a little bit of a role. Maybe the Amarok's not as aerodynamically efficient as the Ranger. But slightly more fuel being used here on our testing, although it's towards the lower end of what we're getting from the bunch of Bakkies. But in case you missed it, go check out our drag race with all these cars and you'll see that the Amarok performed really, really well amongst the 7 Bakkies. Now when Ford debuted their 10-speed box, I first drove it in the Mustang and I really was not impressed. But they've tuned it and tuned it and tuned it, and now I think it is a particularly good box. It just always seems to know what gear it needs to be in. It doesn't really hunt for the right gear. And when you go for a kick down, it seems to know exactly which gear to drop down to so that you get the best performance out of the engine. And the shifts are really, really smooth. I mean, really smooth. For me, the mark of a good gearbox is when you don't really know when it's doing its thing. And that is exactly what I'm experiencing here. Wow, this is just light years ahead of some of the other Bakkies we have today. If you got out of a Triton and into this, I mean, yeah, you'd think you'd traveled in time to somewhere in the future. Right, heading back up to the quarry from the main road, and the composure over this bad surface, this gravel surface, is just remarkable. It really is. I feel like if gravel roads are a part of your life and you do long distances on them, you will probably add years to your life by driving one of these or a Ranger. Right, the Bakkie part of the Bakkies. Let's start with the Amarok, which has a really cool feature. It's a ruler. It runs right along the edge of the tailgate up to 130. That's pretty cool. Never seen anything like that before. You get this very cool chrome roll hoop with the style package. And this is sprung, but it's not shocked, gas shocked. So it does just sort of drop, but it is very easy to lift. Look at that, look how easy that is. I'm not that strong. Moving on to the Navara. This is also sprung, so nice and easy to lift, but not shocked, so it will drop. And you do get the tonneau cover with some very heavy duty tie points as well. Then we have the Triton. Now this is one of only 2 Bakkies here which has a gas shock. I think that's such a great feature. I don't know why every Bakkie manufacturer isn't doing that. Tonneau cover as well, and that's about it, but I do quite like the roll hoop on this one. Onto the Ranger, and this has a 12-volt port, one of only 2 Bakkies here which has that. Very nice Bakkie lining as well. You've got these points here where you can clamp your C-clamp for some tools, so this becomes a bit of a workbench. And you also have a ruler like the Amarok, which is quite nice. This is sprung, so it's nice and light, but it's not shocked, so it drops. Onto the Hilux, 12-volt port, and because this is the RS edition, RS literally stands for roller shutter, which is probably not going to behave. No, it's cooperating. Good stuff. Lovely. This is sprung, but not shocked, so keep an eye on that. Onto the Isuzu, you do get a tonneau cover. It's a massive faff though. You have to remove this if you want to load something fully into the Bakkie. Pretty old school, and this isn't even sprung, so that weighs a ton. You do get that nice chrome rollover hoop though as well. And lastly, onto the P-Series, you get this very nice cab lining. You get a matte black rollover hoop. It's new and special to this limited edition. The tailgate is sprung, and it is also gas strutted, so it has that nice soft drop feature. And then no other Bakkie I've ever seen has this, at least in South Africa, a step hidden in the load bed, which I can't use because I've absolutely stuffed my back. But yeah, you stand there and you go there. And now somebody a lot smarter than me, who knows how to build computer graphics, will take a wide picture of all these Bakkies and overlay all the tow ratings and payloads. And finally, my last drive of the day, the Toyota Hilux Legend 4x4 Auto RS. And this is the most expensive Bakkie we have here, 973,000 rand for one of these. Now, of course, you can get a more expensive Amarok and a more expensive Ranger, but on the Bakkies that we have here, this is the most expensive. And sometimes when you jump into Toyota, it's a bit difficult to immediately see why it's the most expensive Bakkie. Yeah, it's starting to feel pretty old in here. I mean, Toyota has a 10-year life cycle on the Hilux. It's gone through 2 facelifts already. But over the years, they have made quite significant improvements to, for instance, the suspension, and it does ride really well. And I would say after the Ranger and the Amarok, this is the best riding Bakkie that we have here, especially on gravel and definitely on tarmac. So those little improvements over the years have definitely amounted to what is a better, more comfortable Bakkie. However, there's still quite a few downsides for me. For some reason, Toyota Hilux, the cabin feels a bit more cramped than the rest of the Bakkies. I mean, it's not a smaller vehicle necessarily from the exterior dimensions, but just sitting in here, you just feel a little bit more claustrophobic. Some elements of the interior are starting to feel really dated. The infotainment screen, for instance, really does look very, very, very last generation. They've stuck with their LCD clock, although I think that's sort of a Toyota hallmark now, so that's not going anywhere. But at the end of the day, this Bakkie remains a stalwart of the South African market. I mean, it can't be very difficult being a Toyota Hilux salesman in South Africa. Not the most challenging job in the world, I can imagine. But if you head to our site right now, we've got over 2,700 Hiluxes to choose from. So if you're looking for something slightly older than this, we've got a lot to choose from. And if you're looking for one of these, we've got quite a few on the site listed for a bit less than the list price of the car, which I find quite interesting. So you can get one with demo mileage or even brand new for a little bit less than the recommended selling price from Toyota, and we'll put a link to that stock in the description below. But South Africans do love a Hilux. They love the engine. It's one of the larger engines here, 2.8 litre, the GD6 with a 6-speed box, 4-cylinder turbo. Decent power since they uprated it as well, 150 kilowatts, 500 newtons, making it the second most powerful Bakkie that we have here today. There are, of course, a few reasons that are maybe more important than, say, what the infotainment screen looks like when you're buying a car. And Toyota buyers obviously flock to the brand for its reputation for reliability, but also the fact that you get a lot of your money back when you come to sell the car. They're easy to trade in, they're easy to sell privately, and there's lots of stories of people selling their Toyotas for more than they bought them for a couple of years down the line. So that is a really appealing prospect when buying a car. But Toyota, I think, cheaps out a little bit on the warranty. It's only 3 years, whereas with something like the Navara, you get a 6-year, 150,000 kilometer warranty. The P-Series has a 5-year, the Ford has a 4-year. And I feel like while you can extend that maybe if it's the most expensive Bakkie here, it should just have a slightly better warranty. But I suppose the idea is that this thing is pretty much bulletproof. And while it's difficult to talk about the feel of a vehicle, the feeling I've had from driving all these Bakkies back to back is that the Toyota just really does feel solid. It feels mechanically robust, like it's built to take on really, really rough stuff, and it's built to last. And I get that that is very, very appealing when it comes to buying a Bakkie. So yes, it doesn't have the best interior. For me, it doesn't look the best. The price is quite expensive, but you're getting a very solid vehicle for your money. And that marks the end of our big Bakkie shootout for 2023. We hope you enjoyed it and that it was really helpful. Now, we did one of these in 2021 with some older Bakkies, so go and check that out. We'll put the link in the description below. And are you in the market for a Bakkie right now from any of these brands, new or used? Well, on Cars.co.za, you can choose from over 70,000 cars right now. Super easy to find on our main site and on our free app. Thank you very much for watching. We'd love it if you liked and subscribed to the channel. If you've just watched this 42-minute video and still confused as what to buy, here's a quick summary of each Bakkie. The GWM P-Series offers the best value for money Bakkie here. The Isuzu D-Max is more basic, but provides excellent off-road and on-road refinement. The Mitsubishi Triton is a bit outdated amongst these rivals, but a replacement is due to arrive soon. The Volkswagen Amarok provides the most premium Bakkie experience. The Toyota Hilux is long in the tooth and expensive, but it is a solid and safe choice. The Nissan Navara has excellent ride quality and design, but lacks a modern interior. The Ford Ranger has moved the modern Bakkie game onto a new level.
Cars.co.za.
Ladies and gentlemen, a momentous occasion in the history of Cars.co.za. We are rolling out a completely new smartphone app. You'll find it in the Android App Store, the Apple App Store, and the Huawei App Gallery. So next time your app updates, you should see a completely new interface. We'd love to know what you think about it, so let us know how the app has been in the comments below.
You deserve insurance that doesn't faff around. Budget, the official insurer of good South Africans.